Is social media law really a thing? You bet. On this podcast, we're going to talk about the effect of social media on the law so that you can protect your brand and grow your business. Ready to get started? Let's go. Hi, I'm Ethan Wall, social media attorney and founder of the Social Media Law Firm, the first law firm in the world dedicated to social media legal issues so you can protect and grow your brand when using social media. I've also authored 8 books on the effect of social media on the law, including the Social Media Guide for Lawyers, Should You Fire Over Facebook, and my newest book, Social Skills. I'm also a professor of social media and the law at Nova Southeastern University's Shepherd Broad School of Law. So I know what you've got to be thinking. You must think that I'm just some giant lawyer nerd that sits in my office and plays on Facebook all day. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's 100%, absolutely, unequivocally not true. No. Because I spend an equal amount of time on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter and all the other social media platforms that are out there. But that's exactly why we're here today. Meeting 10, 15 years ago, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, MySpace, none of this stuff existed. But now it does, and we have to understand how the laws apply to these new technologies. And that's what this podcast is all about. So people ask me all the time. They say, Ethan, what the heck is social media law anyway? I mean, let's think about this. First, it's different from things like criminal law or family law. We all know that family law deals with divorces, custody issues, things between parents and their children. Criminal law happens when someone gets arrested. But social media law? Did you make that up? I mean, kinda, yes and no. But really, social media law is the intersection of everything where social media and the law intersect. And what I mean by that is back in 1776, when Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence, there was no Instagram. He wasn't doing a live story. When John Hancock signed the Declaration of Independence, there was no Snapchat. There was no Facebook. He wasn't adding John Adams as a friend online. And so our founding fathers here in America, when they wrote our Constitution, never had Facebook in mind, let alone internet or computers. So social media wasn't even an idea when our founding fathers drafted the legal documents that started our country. But even, let's say, 20, 30, 50 years ago, when our legislatures wrote a lot of the very important laws that we have that govern business today, social media didn't exist. So I see social media law as really 3 things. First, it's the application of old laws to new technologies. Meaning, let's think of a law that's been around forever, like employment law. People have been hiring employees, since we've had businesses. And so there are different federal laws that govern what employers can or cannot do and what rights employees have in the workplace. But the question is, how does this apply when you start doing things on Facebook and Twitter? Meaning, can you fire someone for what they say or do in a tweet? And what are the bounds? That's something that wasn't considered back then. So social media law is trying to bring clarity to how these old laws apply to these new and ever-changing technologies. The second thing is that there are new laws that are developed that specifically address social media legal issues. For example, just staying on the concept of employment law for a moment, there are about 23 states in the U.S. that now have laws that make it illegal for an employer to require an employee to turn over their Facebook username and password as part of the employment process. That's something that's brand new. It came about within the last 3 or 4 years to try to stop a new practice, which is harassing employees for getting their private information. Of course, we're going to talk about all of those different types of issues here on the podcast because you can't just post, pictures of you doing drugs under a bridge somewhere and expect not to get fired. So there are limits to these laws. But that's the second thing, is these new laws. And the final part about social media law, if I was to define it, is how the law applies to actual social media sites like Facebook, and whether or not there should be regulation over these social media companies. Right now, in the news, the president and the US legislature is trying to decide what to do about regulating Facebook. So we're going to discuss the intersection of government and the law as well. But regardless of how you or I define social media law, one thing is abundantly clear, and that is we need to embrace reality and deal with it, meaning embrace the fact that social media is now an interwoven fabric of everyone's daily lives, and it's not going away. So we have to understand how the law applies to our social media activities in our life and in our business, so that we can figure out what to do about them and how to safely protect and grow our brands, our businesses, and our online digital footprint. So that's what it's all about. This podcast really is designed for everyone who's interested in social media and the law. You might be a compliance officer at a bank who wants to understand how to promote a credit card within a tweet that only has 280 characters, but you have to fit in all those terms and conditions. You might be an influencer who has a huge growing following and wants to make sure that you are protecting your brand as you're growing so that you can make money from your big social media influence without getting in trouble and getting your site shut down by Instagram or Facebook and not be able to get it back. Or maybe you're someone like me, you're a lawyer. If so, I'm sorry. But maybe you practice business law like I used to do before I got into kind of social media and internet law, and maybe you want to understand how the law applies to your specific client's industry so you can decide what their risks are and what you can do about them. This podcast is for all of you out there, and you're going to get different things throughout our podcast that you can take away and have specific practical advice that you can put into your daily lives, and you can even ask us questions and we'll field them right here on the podcast. Now, regardless of where you are in the spectrum, I like to break down social media law into 4 higher overarching categories, and they are compliance, intellectual property, internet law, and contract and corporate law. We're going to cover each of those briefly today from a 50,000-foot level, and in our future episodes, we're going to dive into those in more detail. So first of all, what the heck is compliance? I can tell you about, 5 years ago, I was sitting in a room with a friend of mine talking about social media law, and he says, you should focus on compliance. And I said, oh my God, that sounds like a wonderful idea. What the heck is compliance anyway? And what compliance means is that in life and in law, there are rules. Some industries are very heavily regulated, like the legal industry, the medical industry, the financial services industry. There are specific laws and rules that govern your industry, and you've got to follow them. And that's what compliance is. Meaning, if you want to play a game, you have to follow the rules of the game. But it almost seems like the wild, wild west when you're talking about social media, because there doesn't appear to be clear rules and guidelines. We're going to talk about compliance and social media throughout our podcast. And let me go back to that example to tie this all together. Let's say that you are a new financial institution, you're a new bank, you're, the social media bank or something like that, and you give people loans through Facebook ads. All right, that sounds cool. In fact, hold on a second. I'm going to write that down. Probably a new business idea. You know what? I'll get to that later. But let's say that you want to promote these new, small business loans for influencers and entrepreneurs, and you want to attract people online. That's great. And guess what? You could probably do that. And if you do that and you make millions, I want you to send me a check for a thank you. But in any event, you need to make sure that all of the laws that apply to banks, loans, and credit cards that you're putting into a social media post have to be followed. And while you may be the business owner yourself and understand this, You might have hired some 18-year-old right out of college who's a social media whiz, whose arm is literally connected to like an iPad and Snapchat, and you want to make sure when they're acting on your behalf, they follow the rules too. So that's what compliance is in a nutshell. And of course, it goes through many different industries, not just financial. We've represented clients at the social media law firm that are medical, legal, financial, even ones that are in like a vacation industry, for example, that are promoting wonderful resorts across the country and have people in the resorts posting things, and there are different countries' laws that they have to follow. So compliance is a really big one. The second area of social media law is intellectual property. Now, intellectual property in a nutshell is trademarks and copyrights. It's also patents as well. But what the heck is intellectual property anyway? It sounds like very smart property, but that's not really what it is. Consider this. Right now, I'm holding up a box that is a Star Wars Lego set. This is a set that I gave one of my teammates, Alan, our web guy, to go build, and you know what? He never built it. This was your birthday present, Alan. I mean, come on, man, what gives? But on this box of Star Wars, there's a couple things here. First, there's tangible property, like the box of Legos itself is property, and you can touch it and you can build it. Maybe if you actually build it, thanks, Alan, you could do that. But that is actual tangible property. But intellectual property is things that you can't see but has value, like the name Star Wars. Star Wars is trademarked by LucasArts and probably Disney. Walt Disney's like in his grave right now, rolling around in the money from all the money they're making with Star Wars. But the brand Star Wars has value. And so part of intellectual property law is to protect that intangible intellectual value that you can't specifically touch, feel, and taste, but it has real meaning and value. And so this may be a trademark, like Star Wars. The name itself is a trademark or brand of Disney. Now, why is this important for social media? Because you're probably thinking to yourself, Ethan, I'm a lawyer myself. I know that the Lanham Act was created like 50 years ago, so why is this something new? Well, first of all, I get it. And second of all, I may have mispronounced Lanham Act. I don't know if I did or not, but it's like the trademark law across the country. But why this is important is that 25 years ago, if someone wanted to create, I don't know, Bar Wars, which was like a bar in space that had like Duke Skyknocker or something like that, you could do that. And you could create a business and you can get this thing up and running, and Disney may not have ever known about it until they discovered you, but once they did, they could send you a cease and desist letter and sue you and get your butt into court and do something about it. But now, someone could create a infringing brand at the snap of their fingers. Like, I can create a Facebook page in like 8 seconds and start selling products or services using your brand that might be a knockoff of it and make a whole bunch of money before you even know what's going on. Then it's hard to find me because, hello, like I'm on the internet, where am I? So trademark law presents a whole bunch of new challenges in the social media age that never existed before. So it's so very important that, one, all brands protect themselves so that they can, make the most of their brand, but at the same time, you also need to do things to protect your brand because social media makes it so much easier and simpler to infringe upon your trademarks. So that's one aspect of intellectual property. Another one is copyright. You're out there creating photos, videos, music, all this awesome stuff, and people are stealing your things. Man, that sucks. What are you going to do about it? And it stinks even more because things can go viral on social media. And sometimes that could be a good thing when people steal your stuff and it goes viral and you get more popularity. But you, as the person who created that, or the person who hired someone to create that for you, you want to get the value of that, right? You want to be able to make all the money from it. So how do you do that? You have to use copyright law to protect all these things you can't touch or see, but have a tremendous amount of value on social media. The third area of social media law is what I kind of call internet law in general, meaning things that are just specific to the internet itself that likely would not have existed but for social media and the internet. So what are those three? Influencer law, contest and sweepstakes, and website terms and conditions and privacy policies. Influencer law. This is a big one. Anyone can be an influencer these days, and when you have a big following, brands want to hire you so they can reach your audience and expand the scope of your influence for their benefit. That's awesome, but there are laws that apply to influencer marketing. And if you as the influencer or you as the brand who hires the influencer doesn't follow the rules, shame on you. You're both violating the law and getting in trouble. So you have to understand how the law applies to social media influencers. So whether you as the influencer or the brand that hires them can protect and grow your investment and make sure that everybody wins and nobody ends up with a big fine from the government. The second area is contest and sweepstakes, meaning online giveaways. You've seen these things, like my post for a chance to win a free $25 Starbucks gift card. Well, guess what? The same laws and rules that apply to giving away a $25 Starbucks gift card apply equally if you're giving away a brand new Jeep and an all-expense paid trip to Italy. Meaning, the big brands that promote this during the Super Bowl. Oops, I don't think I could say Super Bowl. I'm sorry, NFL. If you promote this stuff during like the big game, see, that was like a trademark thing. And now this is going to be on social media. Now they're going to know about it. Hey, NFL. Anyway, so but the same rules that apply to this big brand on social media applies to a mom and shop ice cream shop that's giving away a free ice cream cone. Now, is someone going to sue this ice cream shop the same way they would sue that big brand that's giving away the Jeep? Maybe or maybe not, but the laws still apply. So you have to know if you're going to play the contest and sweepstakes game, then you have to make sure you understand the rules so that you know what to do about them. Finally, website terms and conditions. What is that? Someone goes to your website, they see a product or service, and they buy it and they get harmed from it because your description wasn't accurate, or they connected with someone on your website and they screwed them out of some money. They want to hold you responsible as the website owner. Can they? Maybe. The question is, did you properly have terms and conditions, meaning a contract on your website between you and your website users? That's something that's so important, and that didn't exist before the internet, but it's basically combining contract law with internet law, putting it all together and making it work for social media as well. The final area is a pretty basic one. This is contract law and corporate law. In other words, we're making contracts with people, whether it's an influencer or a marketing company that's going to be using your social media profiles. Or maybe you're a startup yourself and you want to understand in the tech space, how do I protect myself from formation to going in public, whatever it means. You need someone who's going to guide you throughout those particular areas. So lots of different ways that social media and technology intersect from a contract law perspective or a corporate or business law perspective. Meaning, how do you set up your internet company in a way that's going to shield you from unnecessary liability while separating your assets from people who may want to go after you if they don't like what you're doing online or if you did something wrong, because things happen and you want to set yourself up correctly. One prime example that ties all this stuff together is, let's say you hired someone to, I don't know, film your podcast, as opposed to me that literally took his iPhone, stuck it on a tripod with a couple lights inside of a podcast studio, and I don't even know if this thing is going to look good, but we'll find out when we see it. I hope it does. So let's say you hired someone to do that. Who owns the video they create for you? And if they post this stuff on social media, are you the owner, meaning the talent that's on screen, or the people that paid for them? Or is it the company that filmed it and put it on social media for you? That's an issue of copyright and contract law that applies in the world of social media. So that is social media law from a 50,000-foot level: compliance, intellectual property, internet law, contract and corporate law. We're going to dive deeper into all of these subjects throughout the podcast. And our first episode is going to do a deep dive into influencer law. What can you do? Can't you do? Who are the players in the game? What are the rules? How can I build my brand? How can I take advantage of the power of influencers? We're going to cover that on the very next episode. But you watching, listening out there, you may have your own questions on social media law, and I want to answer them. So here's what I want you to do. First, go ahead and follow us on social media. We're the Social Media Law Firm. We're like everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Not on Snapchat because I don't know how to use that thing. But follow us on social media and please subscribe to our podcast. That would be fun because then we could do more podcasts together. You get to listen to them. I will answer your questions, and I promise you, I will answer your questions. Why? Because it's much more fun than me just talking for 15 minutes straight. I want to be able to give you the information that you want. So please follow us on social media. We're the Social Media Law Firm. Subscribe to us on iTunes, and maybe one day, even you and I could be friends on Facebook. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next episode.